Hi, Bria Halverson. I'm the Midwest States Director for the Blue Green Alliance. I am from our office is in Minneapolis. There we go. Our office is in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I live in St. Paul, and if any of you have been in the Twin Cities, that's an important distinction. So, okay. This is who we are. So we're a coalition of unions and environmental organizations. Sierra Club is one of our founding members. So we were founded by the Sierra Club and the Steelworkers. And so we have since grown nationally to have these organizations, and we work on federal work through this coalition of organizations federally. We also are in the states, so our coalitions look a little bit different depending on the states we're in and depending on what type of groups are there. Okay, great.
It might work better if you hand hold it.
Okay, hand.
Then it'll stay in front of your mouth.
Well, I got all this stuff. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, you gotta get real close. Okay, so anyway, we are in Iowa. We have an Iowa table. We luckily are able to coordinate it with the University of Iowa Labor Center, and Katie Rock, who's here, is our Sierra Club table person. So if you don't know her, you should know her. She's lovely to work with. Okay, why we're here. The Inflation Reduction Act. So we worked really hard on the Inflation Reduction Act federally because we think that this is transformational legislation because it's going to create a lot of money. We think that it's going to grow our domestic supply chain. I think we definitely want to make sure that we're bringing back our manufacturing sector, and we believe that this is one good way to start that. So here's all we believe that will do. We're excited about the Inflation Reduction Act specifically because we believe in all of these sectors it will create good jobs, good family-sustaining jobs, as we like to say, 9 million across the country. So we don't currently have state numbers. There's a lot of reasons for that, but we believe that these are the estimates for money across the country, or jobs across the country. So this is how it flows, and I want to make sure that I don't steal any thunder from our good other presenters here. So, and also I'm a political science major, so I only know a little bit. So it's tax credits and deductions, grants and loans. And so what is a little bit different than the Inflation Reduction Act, right, which we prefaced, that goes to states, and it's used for the federal government. This is going to flow a little bit differently, where sort of like different types of money can go into states a little bit different. And it's specifically for the manufacturing sector, and also like solar development and stuff like that, tax credits and deductions are going to be really important. Okay. There are other forms that flow, so like bonds, competitive, cooperative agreements, and technical assistance. I think technical assistance is something that's going to be really, really important as sort of different departments put out rules and different types of grants. You're going to want to make sure that different agencies and cities and counties can have money to be able to apply for these. So here are the policy areas that the Inflation Reduction Act covers. So clean energy, clean technology manufacturing, buildings, transmission. I'm not going to talk a lot about transmission at all today, but transmission is extremely important. We need to modernize the grid, and the Inflation Reduction Act does that. Iowa is a really important state for that. So we need to make sure that the transmission gets upgraded so we can put more stuff on that grid. I'm going to focus a little bit on clean manufacturing. So looking at who else was here today, I thought that might be a gap that we could cover. So like I said, we care about making sure that the domestic supply chain comes back to the United States. I think we're all sort of, depending on where you work, kind of waiting for something, right? Like if anybody's tried to buy a car lately, or that kind of stuff, you want to make sure that you have sort of like what you need, and like we think to do that we need to like reshore some of our manufacturing. So we also think that there's some cultural things that are helpful around manufacturing. It's a kind of great job to support a community, right? Like here's a plant that people can go to every day. Also, the Inflation Reduction Act has dollars to be able to figure out how existing manufacturing can reduce their emissions. And so that'll be a helpful grant money that they can get. Okay. So clean technology manufacturing. So this is also to make sure that we're investing in clean tech. So to be able to have future manufacturing continue to grow here, we also need to invest in the sort of new ideas and the clean tech ideas. And so these grants are just going to be really important to make sure that we're going after to think about how we're manufacturing solar, wind, but also just sort of our precious metals like aluminum, steel, that kind of stuff. A lot of these grants come through the Department of Energy, and so those are going to be the places where you're going to want to look for a lot of those tax credits. Clean manufacturing, also similarly, like wanting to make sure that we are thinking about how we purchase clean materials for the stuff that we build. And so there are a lot of different ways that we're doing that. I work on something that's really kind of dorky called Buy Clean. We're going to pass that in Minnesota this year, and we've passed it in a few other states. It starts to keep track of the embedded carbon in different materials, and that is part kind of laced throughout here, and then different states are passing stuff to be able to like work with their industries to be able to do that. Why we think that's important is not only does it help sort of like reduce how things are produced, make them cleaner, but also helps incentivize our already existing domestic manufacturers. So EV deployment, manufacturing, supply chain, and auto manufacturing is just really where a lot of IRA is where a lot of this lives. And so if you think about Michigan and the big three with those assemblers, that's really important, but also is the supply chain. And so this will actually cover some of the auto manufacturer supply chain, which is an important part for Iowa. There are a lot of supply chain manufacturers. If you want to buy a new Ford F-150, the body of that is made in Iowa, and so that will be continued to be made for the EV, the Ford F-150 EV. So those are some of the things that we need to think about outside of Michigan, outside of where the assembler states are, about how to connect the supply chain and be able to grow those already existing manufacturers that can be part of that supply chain. Then if you think about sort of like the other stuff, like the batteries or in the car, but also like the EV chargers, and there's like going to be talk about like deploying EV charging stations and the money for that, but also where do we make those charging stations? I know that people are trying to figure out how we can source more of those manufacturing centers here as well. So this works very similar to all of the other stuff I said, tax credits, grants, loans, and so it's really about kind of digging into the different departments and where they're at to be able to figure out what fits for your business. Okay, I'm also going to touch on buildings, and the reason why I'm going to touch on buildings a little bit is it's important. We're in a building right now, and our personal health, right, is you want to have a clean building. You want to make sure that the materials you use are clean. Also, you know, energy efficiency of buildings are important as we talk about grids and that kind of stuff. For this purpose, it's also where a lot of the like more individual tax credits live for buildings. So residential rebates, you know, similarly to like when you like buy, we just had to replace our boiler, which is expensive. We live in an old home in St. Paul, and you know, for an energy efficiency boiler, we got a rebate. That's the similar structure here. And so, you know, if you want to put a heat pump, right, in your house. I don't know how those work, so I'm not the person to do that. But, but I do want to point out specifically the schools, because everybody has got a school and a school that they care about. And I know air quality was something that we all kind of struggled with this last pandemic. Had always been kind of an issue for older buildings and older schools. There's money in the IRA for schools, and I do know that some of the unions we work with, like the pipe fitters as well as the sheet metal workers, are working on different sort of policy that they can do to be able to like have really efficient long-standing schools. So just point that out. Okay, so to wrap up here, we have a resource center online. So there's a lot of stuff in the Inflation Reduction Act. There's a lot of stuff in IIJA, and we have 2 different guides online that you can search. Yay. So if you go to bluegreenalliance.org and /resources, I also think it's on our main page because we really like it. Our federal team worked really hard to put together this information in a way that could be a little bit more digestible for everybody. A regular person like me, like I said, political science major. So, and we have some fact sheets on there and other resources. So I highly recommend checking that out. Like I said, it's got background, what we think might be missing, things that you may need to like do on a state and local level to be able to like access some of these federal dollars. That is also there. That's our website, that's our Twitter handle, that's our Facebook. And Anne can send you my info if you would like to talk to me, or you can just ask me at the after lunch thing. But really excited to be here, and hopefully this was helpful. Thanks.